Welcome to Wisdom Time. Today we're tackling a question that, well, it weighs pretty heavily on a lot of curious, thoughtful people. It's this mix of excitement and, honestly, a bit of anxiety. And it's something we really need to face head on.
So here's the core of it, right? You're drawn to these big ideas. You want to understand the world, evolution, philosophy, the cosmos. But there's that nagging voice in the back of your head, that little fear that asks, what if learning all this stuff actually weakens the very foundation of my faith? And let me just say, that is a totally legitimate and a really important question to ask.
Okay, so let's just start with a really powerful and frankly calming idea from the source material we're looking at. Think about it like this. On their own, facts are just, well, they're just facts. Information about biology or the stars or philosophy, it's neutral. It's just data. So if the knowledge itself isn't the problem, then what is?
All right, to figure that out, here's our game plan. We're going to walk through that fear, reframe the whole problem, give you a 5-part toolkit, talk about the amazing reward, and then chart a path forward for you. So let's dive in.
This fear is absolutely real. And it comes from a good place, right? You're trying to protect something you hold precious. The worry is that you'll stumble upon some piece of information, some super compelling argument that just acts like a silver bullet and shatters your whole worldview. But here's the thing. Today, we're going to talk about how to build a worldview that isn't so fragile in the first place.
And that brings us to a really major shift in perspective. See, the danger doesn't actually lie in the subjects themselves. Doesn't matter if it's evolution or existentialism. The real impact, whether it's good or bad, comes down to how we approach them.
Exactly. So this isn't about creating a list of forbidden books or ideas to avoid. No way. It's about developing the right method, the right mindset, and the right toolkit before you even open that book. Your approach, that is the key. It's what turns a potential danger into a source of incredible, profound strength.
Which brings us right to the heart of this whole explainer, a really practical, empowering toolkit. We're going to walk you through 5 specific rules of engagement. Seriously, think of these like essential safety equipment for your big intellectual and spiritual adventures.
So our 5 rules are going to cover everything from building a solid foundation and checking your sources, all the way to understanding different levels of knowledge, being patient, and, well, knowing yourself. Let's kick things off with what is arguably the most important one. Okay, rule number 1. This is, without a doubt, the big one. I mean, think about it. You wouldn't try to read an advanced physics paper if you didn't understand basic algebra, right? Of course not. The exact same principle applies here. Diving headfirst into a really complex field without the necessary groundwork is just, it's a recipe for total confusion.
So what do we even mean by a foundation? Well, it's basically 3 things. First, you got to know the prerequisite topics. Second, you absolutely have to understand the specific lingo of that field, because a word you think you know might mean something completely different in, say, a philosophical text. And third, and this is crucial, you need a mind that's trained in solid logic, so you can actually evaluate the arguments you come across.
And listen, this is a really critical warning from the source material. Without that foundation, it's not just that you fail to learn, you can actually become more ignorant. Yeah, you could walk away with a deeply held, totally cemented opinion that is just flat out wrong. And that is so much more dangerous than just admitting, you know what, I don't know.
Okay, so once you've got that foundation in place, rule number 2 kicks in. You've got to become a bit of a detective. You have to start asking questions like, why was this written? What is the author's real goal here? Because trust me, not all sources are created equal.
See, a lot of books, especially on really controversial topics, aren't just there to inform you. They are written to persuade you. They're basically a form of propaganda, designed to present only one side of the story. And if you read that stuff without realizing the author's intent and without seeking out the counterarguments, it's like walking into a debate having only heard one side. You are almost guaranteed to be swayed, whether it's the truth or not.
All right, on to rule number 3. And this one requires a good dose of intellectual humility. It's all about recognizing that some questions you ask at one level of understanding can only truly be answered from a much, much higher level.
Here's a great way to think about it. An elementary school kid asks a question, a middle schooler can probably answer it. Simple enough, but a university student asks a question, you're probably going to need a professor for that one. And what about when the professor asks a question? Well, they might have to spend years, even decades, searching for that answer themselves. So, when you hit a really tough question, it doesn't mean there's no answer. It just might mean the answer exists at a level of knowledge you haven't reached yet.
And that leads us perfectly into rule number 4, which is a virtue that seems to be in pretty short supply these days: patience. Look, deep inquiry is not a race to the finish line. Finding truly satisfying answers to the biggest questions in life, that's a long-term project.
What this really means is you have to learn to just hold a question in your mind without demanding an immediate answer. You have to get comfortable saying, "I don't know yet." Because trying to force an answer isn't being honest, but just assuming no answer exists is also a huge mistake. Some puzzles really do take decades to solve. You gotta let them simmer.
And that brings us to our final rule, rule number 5. And this one is all about self-awareness. It's about knowing yourself. Because just like some people are physically built for certain jobs, some people are, well, temperamentally suited for this kind of deep and, let's be honest, potentially unsettling inquiry.
The source material uses these analogies that are just so powerful. I mean, you wouldn't tell someone with uncontrollably shaky hands to become a surgeon, would you? You wouldn't push someone with a debilitating fear of heights to become a mountaineer. Well, in the very same way, if you know that you are someone who is naturally prone to overwhelming anxiety or obsessive doubt, then diving headfirst into these really thorny topics, it might not be the wisest path for you, and that is 100% okay.
Okay, so after hearing all these rules, and frankly, all these warnings, you might be thinking, wow, is all this even worth it? And the answer is absolutely. Because when you actually follow these rules of engagement, something pretty incredible happens. The journey doesn't end in doubt. It ends in depth.
This is the payoff right here. When you approach knowledge the right way, your faith doesn't just survive, it gets deeper. It becomes stronger, more resilient, more profound. Your certainty is built not on avoiding tough questions, but on a real foundation of knowledge. And maybe best of all, you become someone who can help others who are struggling with their own doubts.
Now, if you're finding this toolkit useful for navigating these big ideas, hey, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like our video, and turn on the notification bell. It really helps us keep making explainers like this one.
So as we wrap up, let's just reframe this whole thing. Seeking knowledge, when you do it the right way, that's not an act of rebellion against your faith. Far from it. It's actually one of the highest expressions of your faith. It's a journey that says, I believe my faith is strong enough to withstand tough questions and deep enough to contain all truth.
So we'll leave you with this final thought. You now have the tools. You have a framework to go out and explore the biggest ideas out there without being afraid. So the only real question left is, where will you begin? What great, beautiful, complex question will you now have the courage to explore?